Most of the time when you're on a job site, if a safety person comes out there, they're not the most popular person. And a lot of times why they're not the most popular person is a lot of safety people come into it and they're looking at you in a way that they're judging everything you're doing, and what you're trying to do is be productive. You're on a job. I mean, when we go to work, you don't necessarily want to just show up and clock in and clock out at the end of the day. You're there to do things. You're there to get the job done, have people like Matt proud of what you're doing, because I want him to be so proud he wants to pay me more money. I want to learn everything I can. I want to be as efficient as possible so that I don't just stay at the same level when I came in. I mean, none of us start a job, I don't think, that we want to be at the same place for the rest of our career. Am I right? So when we go into it, to be efficient, we also can't do things wrong. Now, I worked for my dad. I got out of high school in '85. A couple days later after graduating, I'm on the job site with him. I get very familiar with concrete block. I towed them for weeks. I mean, that's basically what we're doing. We did layout through lintel for years. That means we laid the job out. We poured the foundations, the concrete slabs, we laid the block, we poured the lintels, and then you guys came in to put the framing together. So we would go from job to job. Didn't matter if we finished a job at 10 o'clock in the morning, we're moving to the next job that afternoon.
All in Florida?
All in Florida, Tampa Bay area. So when we're doing this kind of stuff, you know, you get good at what you're doing, but at the same time, one of the things I noticed that as I'm laying block, I'm very competitive. I want to be fast, and I started laying block on a wall. And this is going back to being efficient. We get on a wall, and I'm up there with another mason. This is months and months into it. My dad gave me a trial. I work as an apprentice, and I'm out here, and I'm laying block. And as soon as we start laying this wall, I get a couple block in there, and next thing you know, I'm looking beside me. The mason's right beside me. This guy's good. I mean, he's eating the whole wall up, got it done. I've only got a couple block in there. So I start to speed up. I get a couple courses in here. My dad walks over and he says, stop what you're doing. Look at the work you're doing. Look at the block. You're below the line. You're kicked out. It's lipping on the front. The block aren't straight. It's down below the line. It's above the line. He says, listen, and he says, you can't do it like this. You know, your joints are falling out. And I said, I'm just trying to get faster. He says, well, let me tell you, you don't get faster by being sloppy. You get faster by stopping doing things that don't happen. Unnecessary movements on the job site. When you do unnecessary movements, you're not efficient. You know, a lot of us get this OCD. The guy laying block, you'll watch somebody. They'll scoop up that mud with their trowel and they'll tap it a certain amount of times. Tap, tap, tap. They'll put the mud on the block. They'll tap it again. And you'll listen to certain people that it always sounds the same. They're wasted movements. You'll see people who lay their trowel down. They lay it down, they turn around, do something, then they got to go get it again. My dad said, never put your trowel down. Always keep it in your hand. Well, how do I pick a block up and keep it in my hand? You use two fingers. You use these other fingers to pick that block up. Or you lay it one-handed from the other direction. You do things that are going to be efficient. We can't, in the same sense, get faster on the job site by being sloppy about safety either, because it costs people their lives. And usually when I'm teaching an OSHA class, I get people that say, man, you are dark. You are morbid when it comes to this. Because when we start out the class, we start talking about fatality, catastrophe reports through OSHA. What is happening right now? You can go to the OSHA website, osha.gov, and look there and go fatality, catastrophe report. A catastrophe is when you have 3 people go to the hospital from one incident on a job site. That's a catastrophe. A fatality, somebody loses their life. Yesterday in Tampa Bay, a guy lost his life falling down an elevator shaft on a construction site. I have worked 30 fatalities in my career since 2009 on the legal end as far as being a consultant who testifies on, you know, cases where people are suing contractors. Either 30, I think it's 31 right now. When we had class, I was probably in the, what were we talking about, 1920? That's going back to 2013. In 2013, I was teaching those classes. I taught down in Guantanamo Bay twice, and then I ended up working there for a year. I've gone back to Guantanamo Bay 5 times since then, and I do certifications for people. I'm also a general contractor. We've got over 20 projects that are active right now. We've got them from the Panhandle down into Clearwater. over into Tampa. I just left one in Tampa. We don't have that many guys. We're working 2 and 3 jobs a day. When we get in there, we'll work so far places and go, and we're still a small company. We're nothing like as big as you guys are. And for me to keep track of my guys and make sure we get together every single morning and talk about what's going to happen, what I expect out of them, what we're trying to get, and then on my job, we pray about it, and they go off. Now, I didn't always pray, but when I went to Cuba, we got with a bunch of guys. I wasn't the one praying. There was guys who did this, Jamaicans and Filipinos that were out there. That's just something that we do. But the thing is, you've got to have a plan. If you guys get on the job in the morning, it doesn't hurt to take a couple minutes to make sure that everybody knows what's expected today. If you have a plan and you work that plan, you're going to have better efficiency. Instead of everybody going in each direction and no one's listening to whoever the supervisor is or the foreman on the job. It's not, I mean, the best part about it is if we have a sense of respect for everyone, you guys get a lot better along on the job site than you will if you go out there and just, I'm doing my thing. Matt tells you stuff. One of my pet peeves in my job is, you know, last year we had 22 employees. I go out and I tell guys what I want done. I always ask people, you know, do me a favor, do this, do that. I don't go out there and bark orders and say, hey, go get this, go get that. It's more of, I want it to be the same way I want to be treated. Do me a favor. I need this, this, and this done. But when I tell somebody something I want done, I expect them to listen to me, and I expect them to do it exactly the way I said it. And the reason why is because you don't know what I know. You don't know why I'm saying it. A lot of stuff goes back to this man here, and to Mike too, and you other guys who are leaders in this company. It needs to be clear, concise directions for what you want done, so that no one has a question, but once you've heard it, do it, because you don't know what else he's got planning. And if he's multitasking the way that I do, your mind is going crazy. I've been up since 1:30 this morning, getting my stuff in line to be here to work on this stuff with you guys, to be able to go to a job this afternoon and keep rigging steel. We go out and we do a lot of stuff. My guys don't know exactly what I want, but I expect them to follow my direction. Sometimes we tell people, wear your safety glasses on a job site. If you're on a job site that you have a hazard to your head. I mean, basically when we do these OSHA classes or safety classes, I want you to recognize hazards in the workplace. When you can recognize hazards in the workplace, you know when you walk out there, something ain't right, do something about it. Don't wait for somebody else to. You see nails that are flipped up on the ground, simplex nails, remove them. Otherwise, it could go in your foot. The other thing is, you guys are probably shorthanded on your jobs too. How many of you wish you had more people to work on your job site? I'm just saying, because how many days do you show up, and if someone doesn't show up, now what happens? You're shorthanded again. That means that you're going to have to work even extra hard. Yesterday we're pouring concrete. I've got 2 guys with me. There's 3 of us pumping concrete, finishing a slab that is in the front of the house, in the back of the house, inside the house on a topping slab. I got to take the trowel machine over the top of the threshold to get into the other section that we're doing. And we've got stuff that's in the front, back sides, and bay windows. I mean, it's a real chopped up place. You'd have fun framing it. It'd be great if you were there. So we've got all these projects. We've been putting concrete in for the last month on jobs that we're laying block on, that we're getting ready for framing, that, you know, we're just doing additions and whole houses and whatever else. The thing is, as you work together, you've got to have the plan and you've got to follow direction. If you see stuff that's happening that isn't right, you owe it to everybody to bring it up and tell someone. The other things too is, we're going to start moving along with this, but just to kind of get you started, you've got to be able to tell your supervisors, and I don't know how you have it set up, supervisor, or you call them foreman. So with your foreman, if something's not working right, if the tools aren't right, if something's broken, the scaffolding, the ladders, the whatever, communicate. Communication is everything. The other part is too, when you get to work, how many of you have personal problems? Don't lie. You know, all these hands ought to be up. We all do. But when we get to work, what do we expect from the guy working next to me? Leave that stuff at home. It's hard to do. Leave it at home. The reason you're leaving it at home is you guys work in an industry that is inherently dangerous. 30 fatalities I've worked. That's not saying all of them. I mean, that's the ones I got to be part of, go through the autopsy photos, look at the entire file from the medical examiner on different ones, go through what happened, why it happened, who did it affect, and do we defend or are we prosecuting the case? In other words, I work for plaintiffs and I work for defendants. Attorneys will hire us, and I work in there. I was in Orlando last year, was on the witness stand for 3.5 hours in Orange County Circuit Court. 3.5 hours talking about a guy who fell from a doorway, reached around a window in a bay window, unlocked the door, opened the door to throw trash out instead of taking it down the stairs, and they hadn't poured the deck yet, hadn't built the deck. They were actually going to frame it inside a little parapet wall area, and broke the rules and fell. And so I testified in the case about it. And you know, I've been in court many times. I've testified in a lot of cases. I've testified in a lot of depositions. But it all goes back to what you do in the field. I mean, there's certain things. Can you take us to the next slide? And I think the next one probably just shows you the F&S on here. And if you got to toggle up or down. Nope, there you go. All right, so, and you go to the next one too, please. So what we're going to go into, safety topics. This one here goes back to basically the case that I talked about in Orlando, I testified about. Inspections. Who does inspections? You guys have probably seen me on a job site of yours doing inspections. I show up unannounced. The only person who knows I'm coming is Matt. And basically, why do we do it that way? Because you're not prepared for me. If you knew when I was coming, you'd have your hard hats on. You'd have your safety glasses on. You'd, you know, be looking just great, right? But the thing is, when we show up, it's kind of like driving down the interstate. Well, I didn't know the state trooper was following me, you know. Otherwise, I would have gone slower, right?
You never know when OSHA is going to be around.
That's right. No, I mean, when they come out, I mean, we think of probable cause in a way like you would have someone who comes out and say they want to go through your house. You know, you got to have a warrant or some stuff like that. If OSHA shows up on the job site, because they're going to come out for different reasons. They could have someone who has a complaint. Somebody complains, a worker complains about his own company, a contractor complains about another contractor, because we have multi-employer work sites. Means you guys are on a job, so is the electrician, so is the plumber, so is the mason. You have multi-employer work site. That means some guys are going to be out here creating. Someone's a controlling contractor. Somebody who's got hurt or something's happening. So there's a lot of different things going on. OSHA can show up unannounced for any reason. They don't have to go out there. They can show up on the job site, and it could be that someone complained, there's been an injury, or they just happen to drive by, like Matt said. They saw something, and they just want to make sure, did I see what I thought I saw? I'll take a couple pictures without even talking to you yet. Once I get there, I'll come up to you. If I was the OSHA guy, because the same way I walk out on other job sites, I'm an OSHA authorized instructor. So I'm not an OSHA compliance officer. When they come out on the job site, they're going to look at you and say, you know, here's my credentials. I'm here to inspect your job site. You have the right to tell them, sorry, man, you can't come here. And they'll wait for a warrant. They'll stand right there and wait, no problem. They're bringing it. Now, when that happens, what else do you think they're going to find? I mean, when people don't get this whole idea that if I get pulled over by a deputy, whether this is a nice guy, a mean guy, a racist guy, or whatever you want to call it, the last thing I want to do is give them a reason beyond whatever reason they had to be there. Because a lot of these guys, you know, they've heard it all. They've seen it all. They've seen the dead bodies. They've stood over them. And so when they come out, they're very serious. And what you got to understand is they're not necessarily, I'm not saying they're bad, they're not best friends with me or Matt as owners of companies. They're there for you guys. They are there for employees and to protect employees. And so when they come out, they're going to go through it, just like Matt said. If they come out and they see things, they're going to write it down. They will work with people. They will do things, but a lot of times you get some people justify their position. If I came out and everything's perfect, someone else is going to tell me, well, you weren't looking hard enough, because there's no job site that doesn't have something. And so they take that attitude. But if you work with people, the one thing you don't want to do is treat it like they came out and they see something. Hey, that ladder's not right. Oh, you think that's bad? You want to see the one in the back. Let me take you over here. You think that's bad? You ought to see these guys wearing the shorts over here and the tennis shoes, and I mean, they're walking there. They're doing like 5 different things. You think that's something? You got to come here and look at this nail gun in my toolbox. This thing's a death trap. You want to see something? I mean, that's what we get on some jobs. I've got other companies I work with. One of the supervisors out there was just like that. All right, you going to go upstairs? Because we're working on the top of the building too. Well, it was just down here on the ground, but yeah, let's go up to the top. Bam, bam, bam. The thing is, you guys have to understand, this is your company. You work for a company that I know a lot of you guys for years. It's a good company. Some of you guys have been here a long time, right? When you go back into that, Matt, his dad, they treat you right. The thing is, we're going through tools like crazy. Equipment's not being taken care of. It means more money has to go buy new equipment and new stuff, which means less money for spreading out for salaries and everything else. When I got to spend, my overhead goes up, there's not as much money for people. If we get fined, it ain't good. If they get fined, same way. You've got to take care of the company's got to take care of you. When you get into that kind of thing, this is about culture in the company. We have to change the culture because a lot of people go, man, I've been doing this for years and years. Nothing's ever happened on my job. I mean, nobody's got killed on my job. Nobody's got hurt on my job. What does that mean? Are you doing it right, or does that mean you've been lucky for 20 years? I mean, I've got it where I can sit there and say, hey, man, in 34 years, I have not had anybody in my employment get hurt seriously or killed. Thank God. It don't mean that we're that good. It means we've been lucky. We do the best we can. But you can't sit there and go, oh, we're doing everything right, and then keep doing things that you know aren't right. There's going to be things that come up. OSHA, you know, what OSHA was when I got into the business is totally, you know, moved way ahead from that. And so as a business owner, no matter what they come up with, if the laws change, we have to do whatever they say. That means we get new technology. There's a lot of stuff that you guys use that you didn't before. I mean, how many times are you using a handsaw? A handsaw. We used them when I started. You want to drill some holes for, you know, post-tension slab that we had. We didn't have a generator on the job. You know, let me get this thing through there. I'll go ahead and drill the hole through the forms. I mean, we did all kind of stuff. Technology changes, so does when you have more technology, now what happens? Think about the technology now. When I started working, we didn't have to worry about guys spending too much time on their phone. Because if they were on their phone, they were at home. Yeah. There wasn't no phone on a job site. Now you got to think that even that, how many guys do you have that you look around sometimes and you're thinking, I'm over here driving nails. I'm working, this dude's around the corner on his phone. You got to sit here and go, you know, you tell your family, stay off the phone. You know I'm at work. This is our break time or our lunch time. This is whatever you can expect. If you need to, text me. When I get to it, I get to it. Otherwise, that's it. I tell my guys the same thing. You can't stay on the phone. If you're on the phone, you better be talking to the office or me. And you go from there. These are things that we have to do because you always have to flip this around. What if it was your business? What if it's your company? How are you going to do things now? And if you're, you know, say some people look at us, I got more gray hair than a lot of people. What does that mean? I've seen a lot of stuff. Well, I hope. We go back in there. I mean, I feel like I could, in most of the classes or the groups that I get around, I feel like I could say I've worn everybody's shoes or boots. I've been in all the positions. I've gone in there as the new guy, the laborer. I've been in there in a skilled position. I've been somebody who's been a vice president of the company. I've been somebody who's dropped right into the middle of nowhere and, you know, started something. I've got my own company, owner, whatever you want to say. I've played those positions. And the thing is, I can relate to people. I know your frustrations. I know his frustrations. I know what can save your life and what can kill you. And in construction, you know what kills most guys? Boredom and complacency. Boredom. You've done this thing how many times? How many times have you got in there, put your apron on, grabbed a handful of nails and a hammer out? Grab a nail gun, hook up the air to it, you know, load it and get ready to go. How many times have you done that? Does it got to the point where that's like second nature? Dude, I've done this so many times. So when you get on the job, your mind starts going different places. You start thinking about different things. The next thing you know, you're coming awake right now because you've been bored, and maybe you're at a high elevation. Maybe you're forgetting to tie off. Maybe you're shooting a nail and something else happens. You barely miss someone because something didn't connect right. Maybe when we go underneath, you notice all the shiners. Are you paying attention to what you're doing? Did it blast through the board? Pneumatic, nailers have killed people a lot. Powder guns have killed people. Falling kills people. You've got to not be bored out there. Keep your mind on their work. That's why I say, you got personal problems? Compartmentalize that stuff and put it away while you're working. You need to be 100% mind on the job. And if you can't, what do you need to do?
Stay home.
Go tell your foreman, dude, I can't get out of that. All right, great. I'll have you do something different. I don't need you using the saw, cutting your fingers off today. I don't need you doing something. I'll have you help me, or maybe we'll find something else, or maybe you do take that day off. But you got to be 100% when you're on the job. If you're not, you make it harder for me because I got to hold up, take care of you. And the other thing is, I don't need you shooting me. I don't need you cutting me. I don't need you knocking me off of what I'm doing. If you're not there, man, you got to get yourself there. The other part, complacency. You know you're supposed to do it, but for some reason, you ain't doing it. You're not wearing your safety glasses. You ever get something in your eye? You ever scratch your eye? How long does that last? How comfortable is that? It's not comfortable at all. You scratch it, then you kind of keep on rubbing it. Pretty soon, it's just like blood red. You can't see. It swells. Your eye's watering. You cannot see. You cannot work. Safety glasses. Most of the time when you're on the job site for F&S, someone's cutting, someone's nailing, someone's chipping, chiseling, whatever it is, right? And when you start cutting, where does all that dust go, that sawdust go? The wind's blowing. What does that mean? Wear your safety glasses pretty much all the time. It's not a company policy, but it's not being complacent. You know there's a possibility. Put your safety glasses on. That's what you need to do. Now, when you go into it and you start thinking about, all right, what else is there? You need a hard hat on? When would I need a hard hat?
Overhead.
There's something going on over my head. There's a hazard over my head that I could get into. Oh, but I'm not working at that level. Are you on the job site where we've got these jobs that it says hard hat area? You better put it on. Wear it. You get onto another job site, well, sometimes not. Get them hard hats out of the truck, put them up on the level you're working. If you need it, put it on. I mean, there's going to be times you don't have to. OSHA says you have to wear it if there is a hazard. Okay? So, if there is, put them on. I'll tell you what, I worked in Cuba for a year. And when I'm down there, the company I worked for, the policy was you had to wear a vest, you had to have boots, you had to have jeans or pants, long pants, you had to have shirts with sleeves, no short sleeve, no, stuff. You realize that you can't wear a shirt that doesn't have sleeves.
4-inch sleeve, right?
You got to have it, yeah, sleeves that come down, most of the t-shirt kind of stuff. But you can't be out there, don't tear your sleeves off. And, you had to wear shirts, you had to have a hard hat on. If you were on the job, if you got off the bus, we'd bus guys in places. If you got out of the truck, you were wearing a hard hat and safety glasses all the time. All the time. And that vest. You work, you got the gloves with you. Whatever it took, you had that stuff. Down there, there was no question. You wore it. But up here, you don't have to unless the hazard's there. A lot of companies go to it and they say, oh, I can't get the guys to know when to do it, so we're going to do it all the time. And it becomes company policy. It goes beyond what OSHA requires. Now, if you look at OSHA, OSHA is like the building code. What is the building code? Is it the maximum that we can build, or is it the bare minimum standard? Building code is a bare minimum standard. You have to do this much. You can do more, but you got to get at least this done. And then you go back to plans and specifications, just like the jobs we do. We can build them stronger, but we can't build them weaker. When it comes to OSHA, that's the minimum standards. You have to do that much. If you don't, then you go back to, all right, I can do more. I can tell my guys, you got to wear a hard hat. That can be company policy. You got to wear the safety glasses all the time. Yeah.
The hard hat thing, when I was out in the field, we went on a residential job site, and I'll never forget asking the electrician.
It always is. People that talk about the heat, you're in Florida. What do you expect? It's going to be hot. You wear hard hats, and when you get used to it, it's no big deal. But here's the culture thing. You get a guy, if you take and put your hard hat on when you're at home and look in the mirror, you look kind of goofy. This big old thing sitting up on your head, it's not the slickest look for everybody. But you go ahead and get 20 of us standing there with our hard hats on, and you get somebody walking up that's not wearing one, who looks like the odd man out now? When you start thinking, what kind of work do you do? Do you want to be known as guys? I mean, one of the things that bothers me is you get on a job site, and I have to still work with my guys about it. I don't know how many nail aprons I've bought, much less I always bought my own, but I've put them in the trucks now. And you get guys out there on a job, and here's someone with a handful of screws or nails or whatever into a shirt pocket. And I'm sitting here going, put your apron on. The efficiency thing happens again. That's what it's for. Oh, but they're heavy. What isn't? You know, we're working out here doing things. Wear the nail apron. Have the stuff at your fingertips that you need. When you start doing this kind of thing, you start looking like an actual construction worker. Now you start comparing the guys who walk the walk, talk the talk, and know what they're doing. And I mean, you don't have to do a lot of things, but you can look at people who've got the years on them, the wisdom on them. These aren't guys, they're not running out to do something on the job. When they're working, you don't see them with, you know, just a mad flash of everything going around. You'll see someone who has a speed that is pretty much the same all the time. My dad, when he laid brick, if you talked, if you just turned around and spent any amount of time doing something, go get another drink of water, go back over here and, you know, mess with something for a second, he ate you up. And when you're laying brick and block, I told you I'm a competitive person. I didn't like that. My dad could lay a brick as fast as he could pick one up. He gleaned the mortar. He took that same mortar. He reached for another one. He put it on the wall. It kept laying. He laid over 2,000 brick in one day. Now, those were brick. I've laid over 1,000 block many, many times in a day. 35-pound block, over 1,000 a day. I think 1,200 or so was my record for laying concrete block. But brick, yeah, we do Norwegians, we do all kind of stuff. You know, bring 1,400 in a day. It was a heck of a day, but I mean, you couldn't do that kind of stuff at the level that we did by standing there talking to people. You got into your whole mind. Everything was about what you're doing. And you just kept moving. You could wear out some guys that were tending you. They would be dying while you're over here, just one more in the wall. Just keep going, because sometimes you get on jobs, you're getting $5 a brick. Not very often, but we did it. You get on some jobs that you're doing things and you're moving, and when you go back and you start talking about the way that you guys work, you've got to be efficient. And then you've got to have this culture of, we're not cutting back on safety. We're not cutting back on quality. What does that mean to you? Do you like, when you get in those trucks, when you see an F&S sign, are you proud of where you work? You guys do great work. I mean, I see it on the Facebook pages. I see what you guys do. It's incredible, the workmanship, the craftsmanship. When you wear those shirts, you ought to be proud about it. If you've got your hard hat, put them on. But make sure that everybody's wearing it on that job. If you see somebody else that's not doing it, they forget. I've been on jobs, I tell people, look, nothing personal. There's going to be times on the job that I try to be as nice as I can, but sometimes I don't have time for it. I might have to yell at you. Hey! You get your attention. Put your hard hat on. Put your glasses on. I do it on my own job site. We remind each other. And if you see me not doing it, what do I expect you to do? It's nothing personal. Get my attention. I may have forgotten. I may have been on the phone. I may not remember. All of us need to do it. And here's the tough part. If you are an owner, if you are a foreman, if you're the supervisor, whoever it is, we can't ask you to do it and us not. My hard hat's in my truck. My steel-toe boots are on. I do it. I walk the walk, I do it. I don't expect anyone to do anything for me that I'm not willing to do. I do it all. And the thing is, we got to be the same way. Change the culture to where, I don't want to do that. Who got up this morning and wanted to go out there and work? I mean, we do it for money, right? Because that money buys you what you want. You want to fish, go fish. You want to relax, go relax. You do whatever you want. But when we get on the job, work it. Act like it. You know, be the person that you want the company to look like. And the thing is, when you see someone doing sloppy work, what does that say about the rest of the company? You don't want them on your team, am I right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
You don't need that kind of stuff. And the other thing is, how many of you enjoy doing work twice for the same amount of money, the first money? I hate redoing stuff. We are paying for sins of last year where we had 22 people. We fired 17 of them. We've already fired, this year we're at 9. I look at the guys in the morning, our circle's got a lot smaller lately. But you know what? If you don't call, you don't show, you're not part of my team anymore. No matter how good you are. If you're not there, what good are you? If you get on the job and you're not there 100% because you've been drinking late the night before, none of the guys with me want you on the job. I can't have you out there. That's where we go back to time management. Manage your time so that when you get on the job site, you're 100%. No one says you can't drink on your time. No one says you can't do stuff. The idea is you know when to stop the night before. And that way, in the morning, you're fresh. You want to do heavy stuff? Do it on the weekend, like Friday night, Saturday night, so you're ready on Sunday night to go to bed early so Monday morning you're great. You go down to these inspections, and I know I got off track a little bit. The inspections, though, when we go out, this job site that this guy fell from, people want to come back and go, well, we didn't know these hazards were there. We didn't know all this stuff. What does OSHA expect of us? When you get to a job site, look it over. Know what you're dealing with. When you go out there and you look at this job site, one question you need to ask yourself is this: where is the accident going to happen today? In your world, from your eyes looking out, where's the accident going to happen? So you start looking at things. Man, is that ladder good? Is it set up right? How high are we going? Do we have the fall protection out yet? Do we need to put guardrails up? Do we need to do whatever it is? Okay, well, we'll just go down through. So inspections, fall protection, we're in prevention, ladder safety, PPE, personal protective equipment, fire protection, tool safety, focus fours, and teamwork. So we can go to the next one there. The inspections, though, as we go into these inspections, before you begin your work, before you begin the work, check out the conditions. I've got guys who fell through skylights, fell 25 feet through a skylight. Ended up hitting it was at a place over here near Lakeland. The guy falls through the skylight. He ends up hitting a bottling rack where the bottles are going through in a distillery. Smacks on that before he hits the concrete floor. All messed up. All messed up, but lived. I actually got to meet this guy. The thing is, when you go into something like that, I testified in court on that one too, the guy's lucky to be alive. I mean, blessed to be alive. It's incredible to fall that far, hit the stuff that he did, and still can walk today. I've got other ones I've worked, they're part of the 30. They're dead. There is no coming back from it. Most guys who fall are dead. Okay? So before you begin work, make sure you know what you're going to be walking on. We go back to a job I was at not too long ago. You get floor holes. You got floor holes there. When you've got floor holes, what do we have to do? Cover them up. Put a guardrail around it. You can't leave it. You can't just, I put some plywood over it. It's got to be connected to that floor. Fastened down. It should be painted another color even on some of these things. Paint it another color so that you can tell it's a hole right there. And that's more likely not saying like where we're walking, but if you're driving equipment. Because we've got stuff where people went over a floor hole. They had plywood down, they take a scissor lift. Scissor lift goes ahead, gets on it, they turn the wheels, slid the plywood over, move forward, the whole thing came down. People are hurt real bad. So you've got to look. Before you begin working, check it out, make sure everything you need is in the right spots. Walk that job. I tell people even if you're going to get in and out of the trucks, You never know who's moved something. I do a 360 around that truck, that trailer, whatever it is. Is equipment being left on it? The other week, I'm at the shop. I'm yelling for someone to stop moving their truck in the trailer because I've got a $3,000 laser that was in a box that someone set on the ground right in front of the wheels. It's like, oh, I thought it was in the truck. Well, it wasn't. Get out and walk around it. It just takes a few minutes, check it out. So inspect everything. Inspect it during the project. As it's going, whoever's in charge needs to be out there. Look around. Do you see a problem? There's all kinds of problems. Look at your men. Are they doing what they're supposed to? Do they have their PPE on? And do I need to make sure that we're picking up? Because a lot of these jobs, housekeeping can get bad. When you're around those sawhorses where you're doing your saw cuts, how many times you get in there and by the time you get done during the day, if you haven't cleaned up your cutoffs, you're slipping, sliding, you'll slip and fall, you'll get hurt, you got to clean it up. Clean as you work. Don't wait for the end of the day. Get that stuff out of the way and stack it. I've been on jobs where guys are using tile saws and we have multiple rooms being done, multiple people hitting it, and before you know it, they're just sitting on this slick tile, things are sliding, and no one's stopping to pick it up. It's your job. It's just like being at home. If you're at home and you see some paper on the floor, do you walk past it or you realize this is my house? I'll pick it up. We may not do it down there, Circle K in the parking lot, but some people do. If you see something, do something about it. So while you're working, inspect your work site. Everybody, not just the guys in charge. If you see something wrong, it could be your foot that steps on the nail. It could be you going up a ladder that's not set up right. It could be you that you're saving yourself. Hazard detection and mitigation. You see the hazard, you fix it. Make sure that you do that. Know what your responsibilities are. And what are your responsibilities? All of them. What good does it do? I've worked on job sites where somebody sits back there and goes, well, if I get hurt, man, they're going to be paying a lot of money for it. Really? You know how long some of these lawsuits go before you get any money?
10 years.
Oh, they can go for years. It could be 3-4 years, but the 10-year one, I testified last year. That was in 2018. The guy got hurt in 2005. Go back to that, it's like, it's not a glamorous thing. You're out of work. You've got stuff, and for this guy, he had to fake it for the last how many years? He's not hurt. He actually fell. He's a young guy when he fell. He had more issues since then that had nothing to do with his fall. Well, a lot of this stuff just goes back to, nobody wants to stop. None of us want to stop. There's no vacation with an injury. There's no vacation with it. So the whole idea is to stay, working so you can pay your bills, you can pay, whatever you want to do. The whole idea for the company is we want to make it safe enough that you guys don't have to worry about getting hurt by something that we could have prevented. So it's all about preventing it. No one said it's not going to be inherently dangerous. The jobs that you do are inherently dangerous. So when we're doing them, we got to be as careful as we can, but we still got to produce. There's a fine line right there. So what does that mean? Don't screw around on the job site. No horseplay on the job site. One of my other fatalities lately was a guy in Miami that got shot and killed on a job site. Shot.
Miami.
It was Miami. The guys were on a job site. One of the guys was out there. They horsed around. All the depositions. They always had this culture in the company of, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. One guy goes ahead and just jokes and puts a knife up next to somebody's throat with the dull side, the back side of it, going, hey, let me have, something. And the other guy says, oh, you got a knife? He got a gun. He goes ahead and drops the magazine out. He drops the safety on it. He points it at him and pulls the trigger. Didn't realize it was, yeah, the thing, it says it right on the barrel. I actually got to testify in that in 2 different ways, as a weapons expert and as an OSHA expert. We get in there and talked about the gun, the slide, capable of firing with the magazine removed. There's things that you got to sit in there and go, you just don't do it. You don't mess around the job. A lot of people think that it's always great to get the laugh. You know, I want to break the ice and get you laughing. So we got some people that they're always that way. There's nothing wrong with joking and having a good time. However, what do you enjoy more? The person who's going to be genuine? You're going to see me, it's always the same thing. I'll be genuine. I like to laugh too. I'm not always serious. But when it comes to my life, don't do something that's going to cost me my life. I'm not joking. I don't play fight. I don't mess around with things. I go to work. And I expect people to do the same thing. And when you go from being the worker to being the owner of the company, you really want people to work. My dad always said, if you can talk and work, go ahead and talk. If you can't, just work. If you can smoke, you don't need two hands to smoke. So if you can't smoke, if you got to take and use your hand and maybe touch something or, sit there and do this, then just wait till lunch. Smoke on your time, not mine. He was pretty cut and dried. I mean, he was old school. When we started working for him, I mean, your respirator was a bandana. And if you wanted a really good one, wet it first. That's as good as it got. I mean, things changed, You weren't hurt unless you were bleeding profusely or you had a bone sticking out somewhere. Otherwise, you ain't hurt. That was it. You can't imagine how many guys I glued back together. Know your responsibilities. It's everything. Fall protection. You guys need to know when you need it. At what elevation do I need fall protection? 6 feet over what? When you talk about a yo-yo is a retractable lanyard, okay? These retractable lanyards that we use, because if you look at a PFAS, there's different kinds of fall protection, which we'll get into, and let's go down to the next one. The safe working conditions, PPE, will cover these as we go through, but this is your responsibilities. Y'all remember that job? Okay. Inspect, identify hazards, remove the hazards, prevent accidents. We could call them accidents. I like to call them incidents. What is the difference between an accident and an incident? Most of the time, an accident happened and there's nothing I could have done. An incident happens and what did you not do that allowed this to happen? You got to know that that's the truth. You've got someone, you're driving down the interstate and you're driving along, somebody blows a tire on the opposite side, comes across the interstate and hits you. There's nothing you can do about it. It happened. But if you're following somebody too close and they hit the brakes and all of a sudden you slide up into the back of them, that's no accident. I mean, they call it that, but you could have prevented it. By doing what? Drive slower. Be in control of the vehicle and don't be watching, your phone. Don't be messing around with stuff. Keep your eyes on the road and do it. Differences that we have. Can we hit the next slide too? This fall prevention. If you look at this right here, falls are the leading cause of death in construction. The leading cause of death. We're going to talk about Focus 4s pretty soon. You know what the Focus 4s, you guys been in OSHA class before? The 4 biggest killers in construction. Falls, struck by, caught in between, and electrocution. All of those are things that you guys could get into on your job sites because it's on everybody's job site. All of them. But when you get into falls, in 2017, 366 fatal falls to a lower level out of 971 construction fatalities. These deaths are preventable. I get on a job site. We got people that are doing things on the job site that are not safe. We had one, I'll go back to yours. There's someone standing out there on an aluminum pick off the edge. There's nothing behind them. And we're talking over 6 feet. It's more like 12, 14 feet right there. Nothing there. But here's the bad part. Some of us have been doing this so long, you're so good at it, you've never fallen yet, right? All it takes is somebody else even doing something and you fall.
Jump 14 feet before.
Yeah. I mean, there's stuff that we've done. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we do. There's a lot of stuff. This is the bad part. We get people that sit here and, you say, hey, can you? Now, do you mean physically, can I? Or am I supposed to? Does OSHA say don't do it? There's fine lines in everything. There's gray areas in a lot of stuff. Matt calls me up to work over erection plans for the trusses. When we're going to go out here and we have to have a plan when we're putting those up, crane plan, fall, all of it. we got to go in there and talk about what are we going to do. When you're doing steel erection, the same thing. I've worked out a lot of plans that we have to do. When you work on these things, you have to have the plan all the way through. You've got to look at it. We used to do AHAs. These would be accident hazard analysis. When you looked at that, you had to sit there and go, what kind of work are you guys doing? What is going to be the biggest hazard that we're going to fall up against, okay? And then what are you going to do to make it so where it's not so dangerous? How do you mitigate that danger before you ever showed up for the job? You had to put these things together on government work. So as we were going into those, you're sitting there going, all right, where is it going to happen? What do we have to do? What's the dangerous part? All right, what are you doing to mitigate it? Because you couldn't go out there and say, oh, that's real dangerous. Well, you can't do it then. How do you fix it? Well, we're going to do this to make it better. Okay, you can do that. When you go back in here, you're looking at these deaths being preventable. You guys, when you think about this, who can protect you the most? Is it this man right here? Yourself. Yourself. If you go out there, I mean, you got to love yourself before you can love your brother, okay? If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to be part of a team that takes care of the other guys. That means don't go out there and be the dangerous one. Do you know guys who are the dangerous one? The guy that takes the chances, the guy that doesn't follow direction, the guy that, you know, does things without a guard on their equipment. You know, this guy's a hot shot. This is a guy, oh, he's super fast. Fast ain't what it's about. Fast gets you people who are nailing things off that don't know how to do it right, and now we got to pull all these nails out or back them out again, right? Or the near misses. Somebody does something and you almost got hit by that. How do you feel? How many of you can go from joking 1 minute to being real serious the next minute? You're sitting there, it's your eyes, it's your fingers, it's your back, it's your legs, it's your everything. You want to make sure that people do it right. And the way I look at it is this. How many of you have a driver's license? You drive down the road. How many times as you're driving down the road, we all had to take a driving test. We're all supposed to know how to drive. And the thing is, as you go 60 miles an hour one direction on 2-lane road and someone's coming the opposite way, you are praying to yourself that this guy is going to do the right thing. You want them to do the right thing. The same thing on the construction site. I'm depending on you doing the right thing that protects me so I can see my family tonight. Because if you don't do the right thing, you're not going to work with me anymore. And I want to make it home. I go to work because it's my career. It makes money. Other than that, I guess if you had the money, some of us love the stuff we do. We do it for other people. But at the same time, we do this for a living, right? Since 2012, OSHA has partnered with the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health and National Occupational Research Agenda construction sector on the fall prevention campaign to raise awareness among workers and employees about common fall hazards in construction and how falls from ladders, scaffolds, and roofs can be prevented. If you're up there, you brought up a great point about, lanyards. If you're wearing your fall protection, do you realize if you guys are using a 6-foot lanyard, how high do I need to be before that's going to work? 18 feet. 18 feet. That gives you a 3-foot safety factor. We're all different sizes. You got a D-ring in the middle of your back here between your shoulder blades. Depending upon how tall you are, from that D-ring, you've got a lanyard that's connected to what? A PFAS, Personal Fall Arrest System. We use these a lot. It is 3 things. Your full body harness, your lifeline, lanyard, okay, and an anchor. You got to have all 3. You can't take that, you see a lot of guys will take that lanyard, wrap it around something and clip it back to itself. Unless it's designed that way, you can't do it. It's got to be into an anchor.
Why do you get knocked out when you fall?
Why do you get knocked out?
Yeah, I've seen people fall with lanyard and rope, and then I go over and he's just laying, he's knocked out, but he's hanging above the ground. He didn't hit the ground.
Terror? I mean, a lot of people, you could be in shock. I mean, it's a sudden fall. Well, one of the reasons that we have, when you look at your lanyards and you think about this, on these lanyards, you have a deceleration device. It pops out 3 more feet. So if I have a 6 foot, now I've got 9 feet out there. It slows you down because if you didn't have that, you can die from internal injuries because you'll stop, but yet your insides keep moving. Your organs go slap up against things. You know, so a sudden deceleration can kill you. So you wear that. Now here's the other part. That's something we're bringing up here. Well, one of the things. So when you go back to this is what part of the plan is. You got to have the plan. Do we have aerial lifts? Do we have ladders? If you're going to the edge of the building, you know, the big building that we showed, if we can't get them, here's the other thing. We have to have what we call, and I'm doing this for another company right now, emergency action plan. What's your plan? Okay, if this happens, what's going to happen afterwards? Can you get 911? Here's another thing, think about this. If I'm dropping guys off to a job site, do they have transportation to get to the hospital or to anywhere? If I drop them off on a job site and the men are on the job site, does someone have communications? Do they have cell phones? You can't leave people in the middle of nowhere without communication, without transportation, to stay on a job site that if something happens, they're left on their own. You can't do it. But where we usually work, most of the places that we're at, we've got emergency medical services within 5 minutes. If you don't have EMS available within 5 minutes, and I'm talking about not just EMS getting to you, but they always talk about, is there a hospital within 5 minutes? Is there, fire stations right here? That's going to work. But with OSHA, they say, if there's not, then you got to have somebody on that job site that knows CPR. You got to have someone who's certified in first aid. I used to teach first aid and CPR for American Heart Association, I think. No, American Red Cross. American Red Cross. I don't do that anymore because there's so many places that do it. It was like too many things that I was doing. So when you get into that, you've got to have someone who can take care of somebody. Can you stop the bleeding? Can you put them out? They're on fire. Can you go ahead and what are we going to do if they are hanging there? You realize if you're hanging in your full body harness,
You're gonna pass out eventually.
well, you can pass out, but yeah, it could be. These are legitimate things. Well, here's one thing that'll happen. If you're in this position, you will cut off circulation. So you need someone to get you out of that. So we've got to think about those things. Yes?
What the statistic is, how long you can hang there? Isn't it, I think it's like an hour, and then it becomes almost deadly.
It depends. I mean, you could be there. If you're there for too long, 10, 15 minutes isn't good. 10 or 15 minutes isn't good because think about this. You know, we always did these things when we were kids. You know, you get somebody there and you'd be like, hey, let me wrap up your hand real good, and we cut off circulation. And you'd play, be like a dead hand or whatever. You can't feel this, then you let go, and all of a sudden, the blood came back in. Wow, that's a cool feeling. When you're in the position that you're, in my school it was. Yeah, it was cool. So when you're wearing that full body harness, there's a lot of these that have stirrups that you can take, and they're added thing.
Go again. You're supposed to get that out and get your foot in that thing.
If you can, it takes the pressure off your legs. But the whole idea is, where are you working? You'll get guys who are working on the side of buildings, window washers, guys who are working off of, different scaffolds right there, swing stage scaffold. They know what they're up against. Their plan is there. Their lines to lower them are there.
Yeah.
They have this already figured out. Well, those are things that you have to think about.
That's the thing. See, we're always in a different position, so we're not always falling off the same roof.
Right.
We're always the backside of the building that you can't get to with the machine, or you can't get a ladder out there, or you can't get.
Sure.
We got to figure out a way to get some guy down.
And it's always going to be different.
You know?
Hey, that's it. One of the things you got to remember, though, is this. When you're thinking about this emergency action plan, what are we going to do in case of? You want to be prepared, but at the same time, there's things that, fire department take care of this. I don't have to worry about it, but get in the position where I want to avoid these things happening.
Have it happen at all.
Your inspection is to go out there and figure out, do I have what it takes to do the job we're doing today? And if you don't have it, you better go do something else and don't just start anyway. The other thing, I'll tell you this, when my guys go out to jobs, we go and meet at my shop, all the stuff is there. If they don't take it with them, it's one of these things that's like, I don't want to have to sit here and do it all myself. Do I have to go ahead and give you the menu that we're going to order your lunch from? Are we going to go ahead and do all the stuff? Am I going to work your plan or are you going to have your plan? What are you doing today? I give you a specific task. Go down the list. What do you need? A lot of you guys have OSHA training. A lot of you guys have a lot of experience. A lot of you guys are seeing the hazard and you realize, okay, that's great, but what happens after that?
Yeah.
You know, here's another thing. When you think about your first aid, for instance, how many of you guys have a first aid kit in the truck, in the trailer, close to you? How often are these things being inspected?
I got 2 in my truck.
How often are we supposed to inspect them?
Weekly.
Weekly. Why?
To make sure they're okay.
Whatever's been expended, we need to put it back. And how do they know what to buy unless you give them something saying how I need to request some more Band-Aids? I need something else. One thing you guys got to understand is this too. I've worked in companies or with companies before too that in that first aid kit, guess what gets taken out as soon as we get it?
Smelling salts.
You're not getting any kind of pills.
No,
You're not getting any kind of ointments. I'm not giving you Neosporin. I'm not giving you an Aleve. I'm not giving you a Bare aspirin. I'm not giving you that stuff. Why? Because people are allergic to it.
yeah, they don't put them in there.
And who is? You don't have a card that you bring out to me saying, hey, I'm allergic to this. Don't give me that. People will ask you for stuff, and so where I come from, by all means, go to Circle K or 7-Eleven and get yourself some Aleve.
They don't put them in package in the box anymore.
Well, some of them they do. So one of the things we have to look at, don't feel bad if you come up there and go, hey, man, I got a headache. I'm sorry. Drink some water. A lot of times you're dehydrated. You know, that's a big deal. I mean, people get dehydrated, so drink some water. You'll be surprised sometimes you're getting a headache because you're dehydrated. You don't need the Aleve. The other thing is you need to leave the liquor alone the night before maybe. Then you don't need it. Or take it at home or bring it with you. But you're not getting a pharmacy here. We will stop the bleeding until we got to take you someplace. If I can go ahead and bandage you up, great, we'll do that. But I mean, that's not what it's about. The other thing is getting people to understand when to call 911. Don't mess around with it. When we taught, you know, when I was teaching first aid and CPR and using the AED and all that other stuff, when you get into a situation and say you walk in and someone's laying on the ground, you just went out to the truck and you came back in, they're on the ground. What should you do? Well, before I do, I want to make sure things are okay. Do I rush over to them?
Make sure he's breathing.
Depends on the individual.
Well, here's the first thing. Stop everything first. Stop. Stop and look around, man. Look around. Whatever, if he walked through and hit a live wire, it just electrocuted him, he's laying on the ground, you may walk into the same live wire. If something just fell off the building and hit him in the head, look, don't run right in there. Stop for a minute. That's right. Do you realize, I mean, I teach, I do certifications for confined space and construction. How many of you ever work in confined space? How many of you realize there's a lot of confined space in what you're doing right now? That's why OSHA came up with a whole nother category here. It used to be in 1910, part of OSHA. 1926 is construction safety. 1910 is general industry. And most of the time you have guys going down into manholes and they go back in. Do you realize they've had it where 7 out of 8 went in and died? Because, oh my gosh, he's in there. Let me go in there and help him. Boom. 7. 7 men dead.
8 guys said, not me, man. I ain't going.
You kind of get the idea after a while, you need to stop. You need to stop. I'm going to tell you something else too. We work with guys for sometimes our entire career. We build some pretty tight relationships. The guys who work with me, I feel they're like family to me. I've got guys who worked with me since the early 90s. But this is part of the same thing that Matt and I got together on, and I can't remember which job it was for, you know, the trusses. To fly the trusses in, what was our truss erection plan? And we go back to that, we've got to go back in and say, okay, what are we going to do? OSHA is, when he says there's a gray area, OSHA says this: if you're working 6 feet or higher, you need fall protection.
No matter what.
They don't tell you how to do it. There was areas where we had in the OSHA puts out like opinions. It's not their opinion as much as people are asking for OSHA's opinion. OSHA comes out, they put a letter together and they say, okay, regarding this standard, this is what you do. Well, we found one that would have helped us out a lot, and then it's got lines through everything. Because they went back through it and it's like, oh, they can't enforce this, they can't do that, but you still have to do this. So when you're on those trusses and we're working, as you're putting in, if I'm riding the ridge, okay, and I'm coming up here, we're flying the trusses in, the guys are setting them on the walls. A lot of times, all right, you're on the walls, scaffolding. Work off scaffolding, work off ladders, work off scissor lifts, work off of something, right? What about the guys who are up in the truss itself? You might have the guy on the peak, you might have a couple, depending if it's a long span truss. That's right. I need to stay inside the trusses. As I go to the next truss, I'm inside the ones I've already braced. I'm starting from the wall.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to go up there and we're going to set one.
You wait for the next truss.
Right. I'm going to stay inside the one that I've already braced. Okay?
Yeah.
And as it comes through, keep bracing.
Right.
You know, sometimes, I mean, people have different ways of thinking. We got people talking about Tucci bars they put in. You know, they talk about suicide, you know, things. All kinds of stuff, the way that we put things together. But I'm just saying, when you're putting them together, stay inside the one you've already done. You can reach over, you're inside of that, and you're basically following the rules. If you have a contractor who comes in there and says, oh, I want you to tie off to this and that, there are times to where they're not always right. You call him.
Call
If
Mike, or
you call Mike, you call whoever, you
Do
know.
not tie off to the trusses while we're setting. How to do it. They just tell you that's the rule.
And there's
If you're 6 feet off ground, you can tie it off.
but there's ways you could do things, like if you take an anchor, you take a double D-ring that you can take a nylon strap and throw it through your trusses. This is assuming that you've already got things that are, you know, braced, you've got temporary bracing, diagonal bracing, you've got a lot of things. Now I have to go up there and put in the engineering. When you're doing that, you have to do it with the best ideas that you can come up with. A lot of this stuff is going to lead to you, but as you know that certain things don't work, in other words, having a lanyard hooked around itself doesn't work. You can't do that. You've got to have an anchor in place. You've got to have, you know, when you go up, don't do something for looks. That goes back to what we talked about a minute ago. Don't let somebody say, oh, it's going to look better, do all this stuff. We need to work these things out before we get going. And usually your company is already going to have this figured out. The supervisors, foreman, whoever's out there is already going to be working with a project manager or superintendent. You need to talk to these guys and communicate before you get to it, because the last thing you want is someone coming out there arbitrarily saying, you have to do this when you're doing it, because like Matt said, they don't do what we do.
We try to get across the point that, you know, this is the safest, most economical way we can do it.
Right.
You know, without getting hurt and without causing other people to get hurt.
And there's times that I get on the phone, I've gone to meetings, you know, and talk to people and go over it and talk about what it is. They might arbitrarily come up and say, well, we have to, that's the way it is. Then we can go ahead and get them other information. You know, when someone says that you're ignorant, or we say that they're ignorant, it's not a cut down. It just means you don't know. You don't know. And so we try to take the ignorance part and educate people. And OSHA is not cut and dried. It's not cut and dried. It's up to interpretation. And that's why when we go into cases as an OSHA expert, I've been teaching OSHA for a long time, since 2010. You go in, I've worked a lot of cases, a lot of injury cases. Couldn't tell you how many injury cases, but I know the fatality ones, and you never forget them. When you go into these kinds of things, you can go back and you realize there's a way of looking at everything. You need to, you know, don't get boxed in. Look outside the box. There's always another way to do it, and it's not like we're trying to come in and say, I'm going to cheat. We're going to do it, you know, as a way of just trying to get by. We're actually trying to do things that keep the men safe, and a lot of times someone trying to be safe, not knowing what they're doing, is causing us to be more dangerous, and we're not going to do that. So, if we go to the next slide, please. Ladder safety goes into fall protection too. When you think about ladders, there are certain things that we've got to understand. You know, correct usage. There's always a correct way to do it and an incorrect way to do it. People fall off ladders a lot. One of the things that we do, we'll set ladders up and we use the wrong ladder for a job. We go up too high on a step ladder. You know, if you'll read those labels and realize you're not supposed to get on the very top of it or the one step down. If you do, it tells you you will lose your balance. You can die from it. I mean, do you realize that you can die from a lot less than a 6-foot fall? Why do you think they make kids wear bicycle helmets? Getting on a bicycle, and if that thing falls over and you hit your head, you can die. Much less being in construction and being on top of something. How many guys you ever see that get on a 5-gallon bucket to do something? You stand on a 5-gallon bucket when you got a ladder close by. Or you take a step ladder and you fold it up and then lean it against the wall. You can't do that. You will get an OSHA penalty, possibly. Now look, OSHA is one thing. Those penalties are horrible. However, that ain't as bad as it can get. Lawsuits can get a whole lot less. Worse. When you think about an OSHA penalty, back in the old days, we were talking like over $7,000, up to $7,000 for a penalty. You know what it's at now? It's over $12,000. Up to $12,000 per violation. Per violation. For anything. You're not wearing safety glasses when you're supposed to. There's one violation. Ground plugs in the extension cord. Just go down the list. Extension cords. When an OSHA compliance officer comes out, they're looking for open obvious. Do you guys inspect your extension cords? We got people that will take and inspect them once a month or once a quarter, and they put one color tape on it. Safety guy will come out, you know, in the company. They'll put a different color on it. That means it's been checked out. Otherwise, don't be putting tape on your cords. You know, one little wrap. Otherwise, they'll wrap the whole thing up. That doesn't work. Using the wrong ladder. Another company that I do certifications for got one a year and a half ago. They used the wrong size ladder to get into a swing stage. When you start getting into different things like this, when you put a ladder up on the outside of a building to get to the top, to land on another level.
3 foot above.
3 foot above. I mean, you get into these things. Don't stand above, on or above the top 2 ladders. Well, one thing you want to remember too is if you've got equipment, I'll tell people this, on the job site, bring it back to the shop. Don't get rid of it on the job site. Because another thing too, you don't know, I mean, that decision needs to be with somebody who's got a little bit more into it than we do. So, foreman, superintendent, whoever it is, let them make the decision. If it doesn't look right, and here's another thing, you take some of these step ladders. We've taken brand spanking new step ladders. Attach a couple clips. Oh man, this makes it better. If you modify the ladder, the good thing about labels, you know, it used to be that you could not get replacement labels. And now, like Werner, you can go online. If the labels come off, you'll give you replacement labels. And people say, well, what if you got a bigger, you know, it's a 300-pound. It should be something. Werner's sitting there going, you put them on. We didn't, so it's up to you. So we can get labels. Back in the old days, if you couldn't read the label, fair enough. When you set those ladders up, you know if you're in dirt, most of ours have spikes on the bottom, or they have a rubber there that'll keep you from skidding. So if you're on a slick surface, you put the rubber down. If you're in the grass, put the spikes down. Adjust the ladder, set it up so it's good. But here's another thing too. Same way that I am about, I hook a trailer up to my truck to pull it, I don't rely on somebody else hooking my stuff up. I'm driving it. I make sure the load is right. I make sure it's hooked up right. I check the chains. I check the lights. It's my responsibility. If you're going to get up on that ladder, don't just blindly jump up and just start running up a ladder. Check it out. Look at everything. Pretty soon you are inspecting everything. Anybody got daughters that are dating age?
Nope. Hell no.
Wait till that happens. This is going to be great. When you think about them going out with somebody, do you think that you might look at them before they go out? They ain't leaving the house until I see them. They're not going anywhere. Now, my daughters are older. I've got grandkids now. But I mean, back in the good old days, you're not going anywhere until I get to talk to them. But Dad, I don't care. Don't go out. No problem. Come see me. Let them know how precious your daughter is. You go through different things. When you get on that ladder, don't take anybody else's word for it. Check it out and make sure it's right before you start climbing up.
Hey, that's the truth. He shows him his gun collection.
It was like 2 months ago, I climbed the ladder.
Well, wait, let me just say this. Listen up. The 3 points of contact. While I ascend or descend. Once I'm in my place, I got my hands free. I'm on the ladder, my hands are totally free. It's while you're climbing up or down. 3 points of contact meaning I've got 2 hands gripping or 2 feet on it.
Strip point to the ladder, okay? When you're done, then put it on the rope. Get in the bottom.
Okay.
Keep moving, all
All
right?
right, let's stay on topic.
All right, calm down. We don't have to shoot too much line. I'll get
So when we're going up there, here's the thing. This is for your protection. You know, it would be nice if we could sit there as a business owner and go, you know what? If the guy falls, he falls. Come on. He took the job, let him fall. You know, he'll learn a lesson. But we can't do that. You know, we do things without reading directions. We ask people to do stuff sometimes without training them. And a lot of us sit here and assume we all know ladder safety. You know, you've been in construction for a while? All right, go move this ladder over here. No one ever said the guy knew what he was doing. He's just been in construction for a while. They go ahead, he comes around the corner, and there's 2 guys laying on the ground on fire, burning. I got the pictures of the shoes that were melted. Each guy, as they get this ladder and they start leaning it back, it starts to get away from them. This guy's left foot comes up off the ground. That guy's right foot comes up off the ground because it's going this way, and they lean, it hits the power line. The foot that was touching the ground, they both lost them. Boom, gone, gone, burning right there. Both of them lost a leg, lost part of their leg. That was in the Keys. That wasn't that long ago. You know, there's stuff that happens on all kinds of jobs, but the idea is take and lower the thing. It's an extension ladder. We have to remember the same way that if I'm on A-frame ladder, a step ladder, and I've got to work on this, and oh, I got it in the wrong spot. Don't be lazy. Get down, move it over, then go back up again. Don't be the guy that's going to be like, you know, I'm leaning out here and lose your balance and you fall. You'd know better. Don't do it. If you're out here, got to move the ladder around. It's a great workout. Raise it up, lower it all the way down, move it over, and extend it again. I mean, you want to talk about going up and down ladders? I've done it all day, every day. Yeah, it gets old. But don't shortchange it. Do it the right way. So one of the things we talk about is fire protection. You guys are on jobs and you're doing a lot of framing. You've got a lot of sawdust. You've got a lot of things that can combust. What is fire when you think about it? You know, it's a chemical reaction, right? It takes 3 things to have a fire. You start out with oxygen, okay? You got to have an ignition source, and you got to have fuel. If you don't have any fuel, you won't have any fire. If you don't have an ignition source, you won't have any fire. If you don't have any oxygen, you won't have any fire, okay? So now we get into that. How many times are you using gas-powered equipment on the job? You're out there, maybe some compressors. What happens when that compressor stops working or that generator stops working? You go out there and fill it back up. You know the manufacturer will come in there and tell you to wait 10 minutes before you fill it up. But on the job site, how often do we want to sit there for 10 minutes and not have it running? You're gonna fire that thing up real quick. So someone's going out there and making sure. Now here's my thing. If you do shut it down for some reason, fuel it up before you start it again. Make sure you're checking it so that you don't just, oh, well, you know, we ran it for another 10 minutes, then it went dead. Go ahead and make sure you're doing it. But here's the other part. Where's the fire extinguisher? You need to have a fire extinguisher close to where you're refueling in case something happens. And it's just like you guys talking about, well, if I fell and I deploy my fall protection, what do I do afterwards? Well, think it through. You got to figure out what would I do. I need to have things there, big ladders, different things to get somebody down. On where could the accident happen on fire protection? Make sure you've got the equipment set up. Get a fire extinguisher where you're at. If it's hot and you spill that fuel, the wind blows that fuel, you're going to have one heck of a fire. Make sure you can put it out. Make sure people know how to use a fire extinguisher. What this is telling you here, the employer shall be responsible for the development and maintenance of an effective fire protection and fire prevention program at the job site throughout all phases of the construction, repair, alteration, or demolition work. The employer shall ensure the availability of the fire protection and suppression equipment, which goes back down here. How often am I supposed to see one of these things? Every floor you're working on and within 100 feet. I should not have to go more than 100 feet to get to a fire extinguisher. You get on these big jobs, you notice they got them on all the floors and they've got them within 100 feet of each other. But what happens when you're the guys that are there? There's nobody else. You need to put a fire extinguisher on every floor. You need to have it within 100 feet. If you got a real big job, it'll be out of it. For the most part, one on each floor. Have it there so people can use it, because if something starts on a frame job, you're working with wood, it's going to burn. Years ago in Quarter of Ybor in Tampa, somebody moving a forklift hits a power line, causes the building to burn. Went ahead and took that building, all wood frame, burned the whole wing down. Fire went over there to the brand new $6 million U.S. Post Office, and it burned also. All of it did. That was in Tampa. Hit our next one. How about, we got tool safety. One of the biggest things about tool safety is using the correct tool for the job. If you're going to be out there working, and think about the correct tool, but how about this? Maintain your tools. You've got chisels. Make sure they're not mushroomed on the top. Cut them off. Make sure that when you're wearing, using tools, you get the PPE, but I'm saying sharp tools are what work. If they're not sharp, they're not in good, condition, you've got to inspect and maintain your tools. Don't just go out there and never sharpen something and never, check it. Go through it and make sure everything's working right. If it's not working right, take it out of service.
Don't use your drill, don't use your chisel to take the drill bit out of the drill.
Yeah, pretty much. Wear your PPE that you're supposed to. Make sure your guards are in place. You see a lot of guys, you see the guys that are going to be doing a lot of ripping, and they'll take and tie wire or tie back that guard.
No way.
Never touch the guard.
No, you don't want to do that. How about this? We got table saws, and people take the guards off the table saw because you can't work with it. You got to have them on there. That's the whole idea. Grinders are the worst thing.
Yeah.
Everybody takes a grinder guard off.
Everybody, I don't think people trying to get that.
Right here on the bottom of my chin, which my beard's pretty much covering up, is a scar that runs from here down to here. That's from a 4-inch Makita grinder.
Oh, that hurts.
That was up underneath a truck with nice heavy gloves on, and had a face shield just above me in the toolbox, but I had my safety glasses on, and I'm underneath there to cut a bolt off because I had to do another changing out a connector on the exhaust on my work truck, and I got under there and it bucked and flew out of my hand, and of course it's one that you turn on and it stays on. And it came down and it hit me in the neck, and I took my hand and knocked it away and cut through the back of my glove there. So, that's one of those ones you come out from under the truck and you got blood flying everywhere. But that was a close call for me right there. Everything's preventable. It's years ago, but I never forget it.
I had a close call with one of those, somebody had that thing on, and then I guess they just unplugged it. Yeah. So I got to turn it on and go to use it, and I was standing on a deck, and it just shoots off,
Mm-hmm.
What the hell? And
Yeah. Stuff will happen. It's there's a lot of things you've got to be aware of when you pick up a piece of equipment. If it's not one you've been using, check it out and make sure that things are turned off, that things are in the right position. There's a lot of stuff that we can do that if you just take your time, don't get in a rush. There's a difference between doing things fast and efficient or just doing things, crazy like. You go into something and you're just grabbing at it, you're just starting without thinking. You've got to think before you do something. It'll save you. Maintain your tools. Inspect and remove from service any tools that are damaged and report them to your supervisor. If the saw's not working, if the blades are messed up, if things aren't happening right, if you've got, the Sawzall blade that you've had for the last year and you're trying to work with it, it doesn't work. You got to get new stuff. You got to have it. Maintain your equipment.
We are pretty good about that.
Okay, and this stuff here, we're about to wrap it up. What do we have left on here, Matt?
Because we had something that was just kind of fill in.
Okay.
I can do that.
Okay. All right, the focus 4, as I was telling you earlier, the falls struck by, caught in between electrocutions, the top 4 killers in construction. Top 4. If you're going to die in construction, more than likely, you're going to fall. Watch what you're doing. Pay attention. Ladder work. Here's another one for falls. You don't have to be up on nothing. How about this? We go down certain places and I take picture after picture on job sites of hoses and electrical cords and cutoffs, 2x4s and stuff just thrown everywhere and people not picking up after themselves, and it's a maze you're going through. You're having to do an obstacle course to do your work. I'm the kind of person that when I like to cook. I love cooking. When I get in the kitchen's clean before I start. I don't work in a dirty kitchen. And when I'm cooking, I clean as I work. If I'm finished up with something here, I'm cleaning that pot, pan, that whatever. It's either going in a dishwasher or I'm doing it by hand. It's going back. It's clean. When we get ready to eat, I'm not worried about cleaning up after dinner. It's all done. It's no big deal. But for me, I can do more in that situation. Same thing on a job site. I can't stand for it to be just chaos everywhere. Now, we do have organized chaos. There'll be times you wish it was straighter than this, but make sure the paths you got to follow, the entry, the exit, your means of egress, the what if area. What if that happened? How you getting out? Don't have to jump over things and go back and forth. Make sure you put things in the right way. Take them cords out, pull them straight, get them to the side, make sure that your corridors, your hallways, wherever you're working, you can actually navigate. In case something bad happens, you can get out of there easy too. That's what it's about. Wear and use personal fall arrest equipment. Install and maintain perimeter protection. We've got a lot of jobs. We've got to put perimeter protection up. You got walls. When you've got, we're putting stud walls up, they're 16 inches on center. You don't have to go out there and put a guardrail up, even though I could fall and go through the studs outside. You got 2 foot wide studs, you need something there that's too wide. People can fall there. You go through the windows. Windows, as soon as you get that wall framed up, you need to put a guardrail, mid-rail, top rail, all that stuff's got to be in place unless the window coming up takes care of it. That's it. These are things that protect you. Don't put yourself in harm's way. Your company's sitting here going, we're talking about safety. I don't know how much plainer they could get that they want you to do the right thing. I mean, it's real plain. Do the right thing on the job site. Keep everybody proud of what you're doing, but make sure that we're all safe because we just want to work. We want to produce. They go hand in hand. It's not like it's something bad. Safety is a bad thing. Safety is a good thing. We can do it different ways. I mean, I'm a general contractor. I have my own crews. I have my own guys that go out. At the same time, I want to produce, but I can't afford to lose anybody. I can't afford for any of my guys to be out of work. I can't. We don't have that many guys. And when we add more people, I still can't do it. We've got to make sure that when we work, we're safe. Struck by, never position yourself between moving and fixed objects and wear high visibility clothes near equipment and vehicles. One of the places on Steve's job, we went over there, over in Palm Harbor it was. On that job, they had where the power pole is, the saw pole, you got to put your compressor there. You got your power cords that run across the driveway, and because of how close proximity to 2 houses or 3 houses there, the driveway to the back of these townhouses, they're basically working the driveway. We need to have barricades, at least something that shows people where we're at. Because somebody inadvertently driving in, when they come around the corner, they'll run you over. We've got to make ourselves plain. Your shirts do it, but when we're working near roads, you'll notice the guys have DOT 2-inch stripes on their vests. There's a lot of things. I mean, it's not like it's going to save you all the time, but I want to do as much as I can to keep people from running me over. So in our trucks, every single truck we've got out there, and even the guys when they're driving their own vehicles to work, they've got 2 safety cones with the reflective stripes. We put them in the trucks when we get out, every time we get out on a street. Those cones are going out, except where I'm in the parking lot over here. Otherwise, if we're on a street, we're parking someplace, safety cones are out. We drop trailers, they're in front of the trailers. We do this because even with that, people will still run you over, but I want to do everything I can to make sure that we're clear and plain. And the next thing I do, I turn right around and take photographs of it. We get to job sites, we take photographs of everything before we start, while we're working, and when we get done, because people will come up and say, well, this wasn't like this when you got here. That scratch wasn't there. This wasn't in here. That wall wasn't like that. You know, you messed up my chandelier. Well, it's like, well, it didn't look like that, and the timestamp's right on my phone. I mean, I can tell you exactly geolocation, where we were at, the time of day down to the second, and, well, it looks like it was there in that picture for me. We do that. We'll take videos of the job site. Why? Because people try to make us pay for stuff that they messed up. Or they just don't think that it was broken before. It could be innocent, but at the same time, I cover myself. Caught in between, never enter an unprotected, this is usually for excavation, but they're telling you, never enter an unprotected trench or excavation 5 feet or deeper without adequate protective system in place. Some trenches under 5 feet deep may also need such a system. Make sure the trench or excavation is protected either by sloping, shoring, benching, or trench shield systems. You guys don't get into this kind of stuff. However, you're on jobs, multi-employer work sites, that they're doing this kind of work. When you get around them, stay away from them. Don't get near trenches. Don't get near the excavation stuff. Just stay away from it. If you can, stay way far away from it. People don't realize, you know, if I was in a trench and the side caved in and it caved in to my waist, do you know what the typical outcome is of that? Death. Just having it come into my waist. Most people die because 1 cubic yard of dirt, of earth, weighs over 3,000 pounds. And when it moves, you think about the forces, it comes in, it injures your body so much as it happened that when they take and excavate you, they could take 2 hours to take you out. They'll put pressure suits on you. They'll do everything. They don't know what else was in there. Your injuries below the waist could cost your life at that time. Stay away from, you know, trenches. If that's not what you do, stay away from it. Electrocutions. Locate and identify utilities before starting work. 811. You got to call. You got to do location services, but you guys don't usually get into that stuff. You're working on top, so that's not a big deal. Look for overhead power lines when operating any equipment. You guys have forklifts. You guys have aerial lifts. You have man lifts. You have all that kind of stuff that you can get into a power line. The other part too, when you have a drop that's going from the power pole that goes and feeds the house, is that insulated?
No.
No.
It's called weather protection.
Yeah.
It's not insulation.
No, it's not insulated.
Which means that a lot of people you'll see, oh, we got to get a truck in here, so they take a 2x4 and raise that up. They'll do different things. Don't ever assume that that isn't a live wire. Stay away from it. Don't touch them. If you're not sure if it's cable TV, telephone, or something else, don't touch it. Stay away from it. Better safe than sorry. Better safe than dead. When you think about something else too, now we go back to these cranes. If you see those cranes, now how close do we say to get to a power line?
20 feet.
Minimum clearance is 20 feet.
30 feet.
You know, different types of power could be up to 50 feet that we have to stay away from it. Because power can jump. Energize can jump from that source to that crane. It don't have to touch it. Then when you get into summertime here, you start getting lightning in the area. I've worked places that, you know, lightning within 5 nautical miles, you're shutting down. If that was here in the summertime, we'd never get anything done. You know, but that's on Guantanamo Bay and military bases. And they'll go out, they'll shut you down 10 miles away if it's moving your direction. But when we get on these jobs, you got to think about everything that can happen. The power can hit you, but on these cranes, if that crane comes in contact with a power line, now here's something that goes against your nature. If you're standing here and he just connected to the power line, what am I supposed to do? Don't move. Because if you're not dead yet, you may be if you take one step. There are lines that go out from this point of contact where it's grounding this, and the amps vary between there. And if you cross varying amperage, that is what can kill you. And so with these jagged lines that go out, the thing is, if you do have to move, why would I have to move? It's about to burn you up. It's about to something bad. Something's burning. I mean, everything's going wrong. Hop. Put your feet together and hop out. Don't step out. We talk about a touch and step potential. Say I look over here and for some reason the crane operator stopped. He slumped over in the seat. Don't run over and help him, because he may have contacted power lines. He could have had a heart attack. He could have all kind of stuff. But if you run over there and you touch that equipment, that'll kill you right there. If you get off the equipment because you hit the power line, don't step off, jump. And then try to stay together and hop out of the way or shuffle out of the way. But don't start taking, run because you hit across two different amps as you're going. That's it. You're done. So, these electrocutions don't operate portable electric tools unless they're grounded or double insulated. On our jobs, we have GFCI pigtails that we use. If you're going to plug in, unless it's GFCI protected, when we go to these other jobs and say we're plugging into somebody's house, we're having to use, their power outlet, we plug that in the wall, and then we plug our cord into that on all of our jobs. You do that because GFCI will save your life. They can be annoying sometimes. You get out there on a morning where the dew's been real good, someone takes the power cord out, or it's in the back of the truck, it's been wet from something the night before, you plug it in, and the next hour you're playing, go out there and punch it again, punch it again. It's annoying, but it does save your life. Use ground fault circuit interrupters for protection. Be alert to electrical hazards when working with ladders, scaffolds, or other platforms. It's all about saving your life. We'll go to the next one. And then we got teamwork on here. What's the definition of teamwork? This is from Webster. Work done by several associates with each doing a part, but all subordinating personnel prominence to the efficiency of the whole. It's kind of a different thing, but basically the team. In a team, we're all in here, we all matter, it's what we all do. We may not be equals in it, but we're all part of something that we're working together. This is what you've got to remember, working together, not separately, not, all of us are trying to do it, but we've got 2 or 3 guys that just won't do safety. It doesn't work. All of us trying to do it, but yet somebody in charge isn't doing it. They come to the job site and they don't do what they're asking us to do. And I say that I say this to people all the time. If you're the owner of the company, don't you dare show up on a job site without wearing what you're supposed to be wearing. If you do not have what it's supposed to be, stay in the truck. Drive by, roll the window down, talk to the guys, but don't get out and walk inside. That's something that I tell guys all the time. I teach to companies all over the place. If you're a leader in the company, do what you're supposed to do. You know what people will respect if you're the same all the time? You're the same all the time. You go in there, you respect people, you want your people to be responsible. Okay? I want to be responsible, but also they have to be accountable. So accountability, you go on a job site and you're not wearing what you're supposed to, you're not doing what you're supposed to, guess what we do? You got a day off. You probably get the next day off, even if it means I have to go out there and work. We work as a team, and the one thing I had was, I had guys who came in, a new person, really good worker. Missed 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. No call, no show. First time, within a week of getting hired, We talked about some stuff. He finally called me, apologized like crazy, sorry, all this stuff. He came back into work. He worked really good for 2 weeks. Monday, last week, no call, no show.
No more.
No more. That was it. Fantastic worker, but it didn't matter what it was. Because if I kept him, what did I do to the rest of the team? I disrespected everybody. I said, it's okay for you to show up from Largo at 6:45, driving all that way. It's okay for you guys to get here early, work late, be there all the time, but yet I'm going to go ahead and let this guy do whatever he wants to. We've done this over and over this year. The guys who don't call, don't show, don't work with us. Because we have a team. And if I want my team to be strong, they know that I'll do anything that they do. There's no job that we do that I don't do. I will go out and teach the guys, hands-on, show them what I want done. That way they know this is what I want done. There's no question in how we do it. And that I don't want them to rush. I want them to do a good job, but how do we not have to rush? Stop wasting time. Stop wasting movements. My dad said, you don't go from that block to the next one without that one being right. If you got to take it off, relay it, you do that. You don't, let the joints fall out and then expect somebody else to come over here and fill them for you. You're a mason. Whether you're an apprentice or not, your job is to do it right. Don't expect somebody else to do your job for you. When you finish that block, you go to the next one because you did it right. When you guys are doing your work, don't try to go fast. Don't try to get, ahead of yourself. You're part of a team. And that means I respect my team members, my teammates. The guys that are working there, I respect them enough that if we're doing something that's a hard job, we rotate so that we don't wear out one guy. You ever get out there with a 90-pound jackhammer? The same guy run it all day, he's going to be dead the next day. So what happens? We all take turns with it. You're filling up wheelbarrows, we all take turns pushing it. You're doing the hard stuff, we all take turns with it.